quickly as possible, particularly the early material. You know, every time we get up and we do a panel, it's really difficult to find something new, some new material that's actually relevant for the people around here. And I think being on the investor side, we bring, at least I bring a really unique perspective around what investors are looking for. And something that's sort of been understated from an entrepreneurial standpoint is how do you think about building a syndicate? And for the folks that do actually achieve funding, there's a lot of capital out there, there's a lot of capital providers. But how do you strategically think about the appropriate way to build a syndicate? And every capital provider has pros and cons. So I want to talk a little bit about this, and I was on a panel actually just this past Monday, and a lot of questions came up around this very topic. So I felt like it was particularly relevant, and hopefully it'll be helpful for everyone here. To kick it off, I want to do just a brief background on who I am, who I work for. I've got a dual role, so I'll try to bring both perspectives in. I, again, work for Northwell Ventures, and I'll quickly go through Northwell.
Oh no, that's the other laptop.
Oh, that's relevant. So Northwell, and I'm going to cruise through this because you all live on Long Island, so you know who Northwell Health is. But you know, the largest integrated health system, certainly in New York and also in the broader country. Very large footprint, 22 hospitals, over 550 ambulatory and outpatient centers. You know, we serve well over 10 million people and over 61,000 employees. One of, and this is actually really quite interesting, one of the largest physician practices that we have, over 13,000 affiliated physicians and employed docs. And that represents, I think, 4th or 5th in the country. So we expand north, south, east, and west, and the plan is to continue that. So we've got a very large sandbox to play in, and I'll get into the importance of that. Quickly, you saw the clinical footprint. We also have an educational footprint in the Hofstra School of Medicine, the Feinstein Institute for Research, and you combine that all together and it creates a really nice sandbox. We do have a population health and insurance arm, although that insurance arm we are in the process of winding down. And then on the community health side, we do quite a bit with community services and mental health in particular. And then lastly is the Northwell Ventures arm, which is really the for-profit arm of this broader system. And we've got probably 4 different mandates within Northwell Ventures. One is international consulting. The second is the venture arm, which is what I'm really going to dive into. The third is looking at core assets in the system that we can take out of the system and carve out. And then the fourth is creating new ventures within the walls with our intellectual property. The reason why we do this, some of you may or may not know, margins are incredibly thin at health systems. So we obviously there's a lot of change happening in the industry. The Affordable Care Act has really driven kind of 3 key mandates. One, how do we decrease cost? How do we increase quality? And how do we increase the patient experience? I credit Apple, I credit Amazon with fundamentally changing the way consumers interact. We expect things. We expect a delivery the next day through Amazon. We expect a seamless product because of Apple. And it should be no different in healthcare. There's a lot of lower hanging fruit that we can work through. But one of the challenges that we face is obviously thin margins. How do we reinvest and create that customer experience that we're also used to in the rest of our lives? So our mission is pretty simple. How do we increase and diversify new revenue streams, new modes of margin that we can bring back into the system to help buy a new CT scanner or buy a new MRI machine or fix a leaky unit? So quickly, what we do on the venture fund side, we are stage agnostic. We're looking at seed, Series A, and Series B companies. We've got a very clear exit strategy. We should have a very clear exit strategy around those theses. We've got management teams that are seasoned, experienced. We at least have a minimal viable product that has been tested. Can use some further refinement, but at least is there. Has some documentation and evidence behind. The only two things that we will avoid are really around long regulatory cycle product. So biotech, pharma, and class 3 med devices. Everything else is generally fair game. So services, HIT, non-FDA cleared devices. We do have a really unique competitive advantage, and that's the premise of this whole presentation, is thinking about building your syndicates in a more strategic way. Fund size, we've got a $50 million fund today. Average investment size is $250 all the way up to $6 million. We underwrite every one of our deals just like any institutional investor would. If you think of a Venn diagram, we underwrite sort of strategic return and financial return. We underwrite the middle section between the two. Major investment themes, obviously, I just mentioned patient as a consumer, care model innovation, healthcare services, analytics. The way we think about building our ecosystem, it's incredibly important to have peers, so other health systems, as well as their innovation and venture arms. We also work really closely with larger private equity groups. We work very closely with accelerators. We work very closely with other venture firms. And then we also create strategic alliances with larger organizations that can help foster additional innovation and bring some of the work that we're doing within our walls external. Today, our portfolio is comprised of 12 businesses, and as you can see, it ranges from artificial intelligence all the way through industrial technology and equipment. This was actually, I'm particularly proud of this. Northwell Ventures was actually founded the venture arm was founded about 3 years ago. We have built, corporate venturing is very difficult to do. We have built a venture practice that recently won the National Corporate Venture Capital of the Year Award in healthcare and global corporate venturing. So we were going up against VP Ventures, GE Ventures, and the large Fortune 100 companies. And we won the healthcare group. And we did so because of the reputation with healthcare entrepreneurs and our peers in the community of how we actually add value to companies. And I want to walk through what that actually looks like. So I'm going to play a quick video for you, and some of you may have seen this, but it strongly discourages this. You can see why.
Eric, you're counting on it on Wi-Fi.
Oh, there's no Wi-Fi?
It's not bad.
Okay, that's too bad. Is that... Would you mind actually just plug that in? If I can't get it, we can sort of move on. Can't get in here. Unfortunately, so I'll give you the brief overview here. A guy by the name of Fred Wilson at Union Square Ventures. You should watch the video because it's somewhat comedic. He is very direct, and his overall premise is that corporate venturing sucks, and we add no value. And obviously there's a disconnect between pure financial venture investors and corporate venture investors. He's got an incentive to say this, although he's particularly brash and harsh. It does sway, the entrepreneurs in the room. It can and does sway sort of your opinion and how you view corporate strategic investors. I will tell you from the entrepreneurial standpoint, I take the complete opposite point of view. And I'll walk through exactly why. So if you get a chance, just type in corporate VCs or the devil on YouTube and that'll pop up. So when you think of it, and I don't want to create an educational lesson here for everyone, but certainly for entrepreneurs, the way I like to think about sources of capital, and there's a lot out there. So for all the entrepreneurs, don't get discouraged. And venture is not your only hope. There's a lot of capital out there. Whether it's through this guy to the left, if you guys remember those crazy commercials, government grants, you've got banks, you've got family offices, angels, you've got your traditional venture investor off all the way to your right. And then you've got, again, your strategic corporate investors. And the way I think about it, it's value add on your y-axis. Your cost of capital is on your x-axis. And so, your venture investors are looking at really your highest cost of capital. And each one of those adds, different levels of value. So I encourage you to think about it in sort of those two ways. Generally, and I'm generalizing here, the other capital, it's going to provide financial backing, and there are pros and cons here. They'll provide strategic guidance, they'll provide SMEs, but it's a different level of granularity. When you think about strategic capital and when it works well, and that's a really key point, is when strategic venture investors investing works well, it tips the scale in the favor of the entrepreneur. And quite frankly, builds enterprise value that you can never achieve from the outside. So I want to dive into ClearPath, and this is an example of a business that we invested in about 14, 15 months ago. It's a company that I'm also now running. And I think it provides a really good depiction of when businesses work well, when CVC investment works well, it can really help align stakeholders and create an opportunity that was never seen prior to coming in. So I'll quickly kind of cruise through what ClearPath actually is. Our vision here at ClearPath is really to standardize and transform digitally the quality, safety, cost, and throughput of anatomic pathology. Anatomic pathology really hasn't changed much, and I say hasn't changed much, and certain parts of it haven't changed in over 100 years. So the same process that we're going to get into really hasn't changed in 100 years. So there's a lot of problems in the laboratory